Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome indeed, yes, to another edition of the Mark Moses Show podcast. As we're always broadcasting from the Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorney Studios. Take back control of your life. Call them today. Yes, it's Anidjar and Levine Accident Attorneys. And now to talk the latest on UCF basketball with 2 games to go here in the regular season. It's my great friend, does a great job with the Orlando Sentinel. He is Matt Murschel. Matt, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Let me tell you. So Saturday night, I sat down. I'm like, look, I'm going to flip back and forth. I'm going to see this big Gator Arkansas game, and I'm going to watch UCF take on Baylor. Florida game was over in about 2 minutes. It's like over. And then I'm watching one of the craziest back and forth basketball games of the year. You were there at the arena Saturday night. I know UCF lost by a point, but what was it like seeing that game in person?
Well, you could definitely feel the energy in the crowd. This is they understand that we're getting towards the end. There are a few more regular season games left. This team has kind of positioned itself to get into the NCAA tournament possibly. And so there was a lot of excitement there. But, I thought from the very start, there was a moment where UCF just seemed kind of out of sync. I think they struggled early on. They fell behind by 15 points midway through the first quarter, the first half.
Yeah.
And they struggled, they really struggled to kind of to do the things that they normally have done really well. They weren't rebounding well. They weren't shooting the ball well at times. They defensively got, kind of lax here and there. You saw Baylor make a couple really good runs, not taking anything away from Baylor. I thought Baylor played really well in the first half. I thought they shot the ball extremely well. And I think it was almost like a carbon copy of what UCF did against BYU on earlier in that week, where they came out really hot, shot the ball really well. UCF didn't seem to have an answer, and I think that's kind of went in. So UCF goes into half, down by double digits. Everyone's kind of staring at each other like, okay, what's going to happen now? And you saw UCF come out in the second half right from the start, made a big, good, strong run, kind of got themselves back in the game, fought back and forth game until the final play where it came down to basically a foul called, on a 3-point shot that, sent, Baylor to the line. And then instead, the free throw shooter made one shot, and that's how UCF lost the game. So it was a difficult loss for UCF in a lot of ways. I mean, because they would have loved to have had that game, but Baylor's a good team. It's not like they were playing the bottom feeder here, of the Big 12. So now what's going to happen is UCF's going to have to kind of bounce back. They're going to have to find a way to win their final home game against Oklahoma State Tuesday night, and they got to find a way maybe to win on the road at West Virginia. It's not necessarily crucial they win at West Virginia, but if they lose tomorrow night, then I think it really does become kind of one of those situations where they're going to have to win.
Okay, press clippings. You've done this a long time. I'm going there. You lost this game. You had no business losing to Baylor. You should have won this game. Like you said, coming off the emotional, just big win at BYU. Is this a must win now? When you look at bracketology, Joe Lunardi, that type of look, do you need to win this, your senior night home finale? Do you got to win this game?
I would say it would help a lot. I'm not going to put must win scenario on that. I think it would help a lot. Right now, I think the last bracketology I've seen for UCF is they're still like an 8 or 9 seed. If you lose against Oklahoma State and then you lose, let's say at West Virginia, and you get knocked out of the Big 12 tournament early, who knows? Maybe UCF falls way down to being a double-digit seed. That's not where they want to be because, again, you want to have an opportunity to get in the first round, at least have a chance to maybe get past the second round to get in this, and face somebody. So I think they're going to have to come up with something. I thought going into the season, 9 wins and conference play would be enough to get them in because it's this tough Big 12 conference. We've seen it week in and week out. They get to 9 wins. I thought they were going to be secure. Now maybe a 10th win would be enough to really kind of help their seeding a little bit, keep them at that maybe 8, 9, 7 spot where they've kind of been out the last couple of weeks. They just need to find a way to get back to how they play good basketball, and they've been banged up and injured, where they didn't have Riley Kugel for a couple of games, but yet they still won both those games in that Utah stretch. And they had JaMychal Stillwell was banged up in that BYU game, came back, was able to play against Baylor, played well against Baylor, but it just, they have moments where they look almost unstoppable, like we saw in the first half against BYU, and you think, man, this team's great. And then they have moments where they look against the first half against Baylor where sometimes it's just they can't seem to kind of lock it in. And so I think that's what they're going to have to do. They have to find a way to win one of these last two games. And I think that'll help them a lot.
All right, what's interesting with what you're saying, and you've seen this team play all year, you have them in. You don't think they're on the bubble. You have them locked in right now. You think they're going to be in the tournament.
I think they should be in the tournament. That's where I mean, that's my feeling right now. I felt like when they went through that stretch earlier a couple of weeks ago when they lost, I think it was maybe 2 or 3 games in a row. I was concerned because I felt like, well, okay, this is it. If you lose a couple more games, you're probably not going to get in, unless you can get to that 9 or 10 win season. I think at 9, I would say that they're in, but again, this is the March Madness. This is what makes March. I could think 9's great, and but if they fall and they lose, 3 in a row, let's say, to finish the regular season, and they lose in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, then all bets are off. Maybe that's not enough to get in. Maybe the committee says that's not strong enough. They've got quality wins right now. Listen, they beat quad 1 wins against Texas A&M, Kansas, Texas Tech, BYU. I mean, they've got good quality wins. And the stat that the school likes to put out there, which is a pretty good stat, is the Big 12. Ever since 2014, a team that's finished 500 or better in the Big 12 has never been left out of the tournament. Huh. So you got to imagine that they're a solid, strong case to be put in there. But again, you look at around college basketball and you see a lot of schools there in that same spot, and they may find themselves at home. So this to me would be, as you said, maybe not must win Tuesday night, but I think it's probably as a case of you have to get this win as best they can.
Eye test. Does this team look like a team that, hey, they can win a couple games in the tournament with their firepower on offense?
Yeah, if they're healthy and they're playing like they've done at times during this year, I think they could get through a couple wins in the tournament. They play defense well at times. They shoot the ball really well. They like to rebound. They're one of those strong. If they out rebound you, they got a good chance of winning games. But they've got to be healthy. They've got to be 100%. JaMychal Stillwell to me is the heart and soul of this team. I mean, if he's not on that floor, they struggle. Because they need someone who's got a little physical presence. I thought John Bull at center has played outstanding the last month and a half, 2 months. He's been, really the catalyst out front. You saw so much so you saw against Baylor in the second half. He picks up his 3rd foul early in the second half, and Johnny just went with him. Johnny said, "I'm just going to keep going with him because we need him on the floor. We need to help him. We need him to help him get that lead down," and he was able to do that. And then Riley Kugel. Riley Kugel was out, but again, you need that guy who can kind of score, who's got some defensive prowess. And so they've got to be healthy. If they're healthy and they're everything's going right, I think they can make a good run. Now, that being said, I'm not saying Sweet 16 or getting to, I'm not sure at that point, but if they got on the right bracket and they got going well, I would say, yeah, sure. There's nothing to say this team could make a good run.
You know what? Even they lose this game to Baylor, and it's a tough loss by 1 point, came down to the final possession. I thought we were going to go to overtime, and I bet everyone at the arena was thinking the same thing, but it didn't happen. I'm sold on them off those 2 comebacks they had in the second. Like you said, started the second half, they cut it to 2 when they're down double digits. Then late in the game, they actually tie it. That showed me something. Even in a loss, I am sold on UCF where, hey, if they're in a hole, they can dig themselves out of the hole. Do you feel that way as well about this team?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's only been 2 games this season, I think, or I can recall that they fell down by double digits and didn't fight back, where they just it just was, I think it was against Arizona at one point, and then there was another game as well, and maybe it was Iowa State. But I think every other game when they've been down by double digits, they've found a way to come back. They found a way to kind of make a good run, and sometimes it's just making adjustments. Sometimes it's getting better, defensively, maybe locking down a little bit. I think where they struggle a little bit with this team is how they start games. I think, and Johnny said this before too, is where sometimes they get out a little slow in the gate, and it's just they find themselves down and they have to kind of rally back and make that big room. Against BYU, you didn't see that. They came out right away and really put the hammer down and really kind of build up that big lead. If they could do that a little more often, where they come out maybe hot shooting and build up a little bit of a lead, and then kind of maybe use their defense and cruise a little bit, I think they've got an opportunity. But they've fought in every game pretty much. They have not been like, okay, we're out of this game, we're done. I mean, they fought to the very end. So that's a good sign. And you consider, I tell people this all the time. Think about this team: 13 newcomers. I mean, these are guys who weren't on the team last year. This team returned 0 production from last year. And for all these guys to bond and be the way they are and to come out and play the way they have, it's pretty incredible, to get them to be in this spot where we're talking about an NCAA tournament bid. And it's something that this program hasn't had since the 2018-19 year.
You're absolutely right. Almost a decade ago, which is crazy to say. The last time they made the tournament, what was it, the 19th season? So my question for you is, you bring up all these new players. How is it constructed? Do you just throw out NIL? How did Johnny Dawkins do this to get this team on the floor?
Well, I think a lot of it was NIL. A lot of it was the talent, evaluation, trying to find ways to see who they wanted that felt like would be a best fit. Johnny always is going to go after really good guards, point guards. I thought getting Themis Folks, their point guard, was really important for them. They got him from Milwaukee. He, in a sense, kind of also was a package deal with JaMychal Stillwell, even though they didn't talk about that. They both decided to come to UCF. That was huge, because he had two guys who'd played together before. They understood what they needed to do. Stillwell is kind of that like Dennis Rodman type mentality on the floor, wants to get as many rebounds. He's a double-double machine when he really gets going. Folks is a guy who's been averaging, I think he's set the record for in the school program for assists this season. A guy who really dished the ball. Then they got guys like Riley Kugel, a guy who's from Orlando, who went to Florida at one point, was considered an NBA first-round draft pick. They bring in Kugel, and Kugel comes back, and all of a sudden he provides a little bit of a spark. You get John Bowl to come in, a 7-foot center, a guy who played very minimal at Ole Miss, but now he comes to UCF, and he steps into that center role, and he's really kind of grown into that spot. And then I think Johnny's done a good job of adding pieces here and there, for the bench. And I think what people tend to forget is that Johnny really digs deep in the bench. He really likes to go 9-10 guys deep. So he wants guys who come in and play a little minutes and find ways to kind of help out. And I think every guy in a way has kind of helped here or there, doing something here. And I think the most important thing for all this is just building chemistry and camaraderie. I mean, because of the way the portals works out with not just football and but also basketball, and it's about getting these guys to buy in quickly. I mean, because you don't have a lot of time. You don't have 2 seasons to build a team. You don't have time to sit down and think about, okay, here's what we have. You've got to go out and bring in some players and hope that maybe they can find a way to have it come back and lock in right away. And this team has done that so far. And even going to Utah last week, I asked Johnny about this, and he said, listen, this is a team bonding exercise for us. We go on the road for 5 days. We're going to learn more about each other. We're going to learn what it takes to kind of hang out together in the hotel and what to do and prepare for yourself and learn more about each other. I asked the players about it. They said they loved it. I mean, it gives them opportunity to learn more about each other. So that's the key, I think, to what this team has had success for us. They bonded well. They've done well. I don't think they did that so much last year, the team that he had last year. I thought they had moments where they just didn't look like a cohesive unit. I think this year they've done a much better job on that.
So the question then is, are they going to have a new team next year? Do you just how does this work now? It's like junior college basketball. Is this what you get 1 or 2 years, then they're out the door? It's weird.
Yeah, it pretty much is. I mean, you think about it. I'm sure UCF will try to re-sign some of the players they have on the roster, guys who have eligibility left. I mean, especially guys they feel like are going to help them. Maybe you get a guy like a John Bowl. Maybe you look at someone else who can kind of come in and help out. Chris Johnson, who's played at guard, who's filled in for Riley Kugel when he's been hurt. Maybe you convince him to come back. Maybe you get 2 or 3 guys to decide to come back and build them as your core. And then what happens is you go out and you find new guys. You have to go out and hit the free agent market, so to speak. And you just got to find guys that you feel like are going to have the best fit for you. And maybe you get a couple freshmen, high school guys that maybe you could convince to come back. And okay, that builds the core. And you got 4 or 5 guys there. And then you're not necessarily having to bring as many guys. But it's been tough. Basketball, it's really been tough with. I mean, football, you saw what happened with Scott Frost in year 1. He had to bring in 70 new players, that rebuild the roster. Next year was like 40, I think it was 42, something like that. Not as many. Basketball, that's not the case because your roster is still small. You have to flip the roster pretty much every year. And I think that's what Johnny would like to see, is like some of these guys stick around a little bit. But that's going to come down to money and situation of where, they feel like this is good. I think them getting to the NCAA tournament would be huge for keeping some of these guys, because you could say, we've got pieces here that went there. Let's see if we can do it again. So I think that'll help them. But, this is a program right now that is not, remember, I think people tend to forget, UCF's not a basketball school. And I don't think they've invested nearly as much as they did, a lot of teams did in the past, like a Kansas, or a Arizona or things like that. I think they're doing better over the last couple of years in investing in the basketball program, but they still are not anywhere near like those upper bloods.
Well, those schools have been around for 100 years playing basketball, and they had a head start. And look, I'll just say this: for the players, if you play well and another school says, here's $4 million. I don't blame the student
No,
athletes. I don't.
no,
Like,
no. I mean,
you guys
and
know.
that's I mean, and that's what's happened. And a lot of times, listen, the schools themselves understand that. UCF has had several players on several different sports who have gotten big contracts, and they've just still told them, listen, you got to take that money. I mean, we can't give you that kind of money. You know, we're limited by what we have. I mean, but you have to be smart with it. That's why I talk about talent evaluation, because it is like an NFL team or an NBA team. You've got a certain budget, you've got your cap, you've got to look at it and say, what can we spend our money on? And then you start breaking down, who do we feel like is going to give us the most return for our money? And it's teams that really can identify players who maybe were not, let's say, Division One player, or not top Division One players, but maybe get a mid Division One or Division Two player or something that they feel like, or a JUCO player that they feel like maybe could give them a better return for less money. And then that way they could spend more money on other players. I mean, maybe they could get a couple a top, a top scorer or a top guy like that. And I think the one thing that benefits basketball right now, college basketball, is because of this situation, we're having more and more players stick around. More and more players aren't willing to jump to the NBA. They're willing to stick around for another year or two because they can get paid better than they probably could if they jumped, unless they were going to be a first round pick in the NBA. So that's the thing that's benefited. And you see a lot of these coaches now trying to figure out where they get these guys.
Have you enjoyed covering this team, being competitive, winning big games? I know you have, but I want to hear you say it.
Yeah. I mean, it's always fun when a team wins. It's always fun when they're competitive. It's always fun to see the fans get excited. I mean, Saturday night was a near sellout. Maybe it was a sellout. I think they announced 8,700 fans. I mean, when the stadium's packed and there's an electric atmosphere and they get going and the team's playing well, and it just seems like everything is right in the world. I mean, so to speak, when it comes to, because I'm a basketball. I came from Indiana. I love basketball. So to see that happen, it gets there. But when it's not happening and the team's bad and the arena's not full and you're looking around going, where is everybody? And I mean, it really kind of hurts a little bit to see that, on the team, because you want to see the best and you go out there and play. And I think this season has been interesting. It's been fun. I'd like to see them get to the NCAA tournament for sure, because I think that would be a huge check mark off them. And then on the other hand, I like Johnny Dawkins. I think Johnny's a good coach. I think I think there's some in the fan base over the last couple of years who've been crying out that he needs to be fired. But I'm also going to say this. I think the guy does an incredible job with what he's got. You know what I mean? I don't think you could bring in who are you going to bring in that's going to replace him, that you don't have to pay, $10 million a year for, and you don't have that kind of money to pay. So I think it's finding the secret sauce. It's finding that success of getting guys to buy in and having that team mentality and going out there and playing. I think that's where the success comes from.
It's a great answer. Let's end with this with Matt Murschel, Orlando Sentinel. I'm happy you're getting basketball right now because you've done this a long time. It's like college football. Usually I'd be talking recruiting, right? How's the recruiting class? It's like tumbleweeds going by. What happened to college football? Is it all just the transfer portal? What's happening from the content standpoint?
Well, it's the transfer portal. I mean, there's a majority of teams. It just depends on what your mentality is. Some teams' mentality is, I'm going to lean heavily in the portal, and we're going to get most of our major players through the portal, and maybe use a little bit of recruiting, high school recruiting. And then some teams are like, hey, I'm going to recruit and sign 25, 30 high school players, and we're going to because you could pay those guys a lot less than you could pay some of the transfers coming in. It's just your mentality going. I think for UCF right now, their mentality is it's still a kind of a mix. But I think right now, Scott Frost said it a couple months, like a month and a half ago. They're trying to find players that can play now, players that can step on the field and contribute right now, who have experience, who've done that already. They don't need to kind of sit there and hold their hand a little bit or give them a few games to get going. And I think high school wise, if you're recruiting a player high school, you've got to make sure that player, if you're going to pay him, you've got to make sure he steps on the field now. You can't wait for a guy to sit back and say, okay, well, maybe in 2 or 3 years, you're going to be a Division or an FBS player.
Yeah.
When we develop you, you need a guy almost who steps in now. So that's maybe why you're not signing 20, 25 players. Maybe you're only signing 15 or 12 or whatever, because you want to use that money to bring in guys that you believe are going to help yourself. So, yeah, I mean, recruiting wise, everyone's looking around going, why are we hearing more recruiting news? Well, I think it's a little too early right now. I think UCF has got an eye on some players, but I also think they're not ready to jump into that yet. And I think also players are waiting to see what happens, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities. So right now, everyone's just waiting for is spring football to start, which looks like won't happen until probably late March. So I mean, it's a little bit crickets, but I think it's not like they're not doing their due diligence behind the scenes.
When does spring football start up for you?
There hasn't been an official date yet from UCF. They're still working, but I've been told it's going to be probably somewhere towards late March.
Okay.
They may even go into May by the time, but when it's all done, it may finish out in May. I think part of that is because of listen, UCF goes into the NCAA tournament basketball wise. You know, you don't want to take away from basketball by having people
I agree.
football and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of just waiting to see what happens. And because there's no second transfer window like there was in the past, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about guys jumping in the portal. So you can kind of take your time and get guys ready to go and get your team ready to go. Make sure they're in the weight room doing everything, getting themselves ready to go, and so you can kind of go on. So it's going to be a bit, and I know it's people are eager because you're seeing other schools like Florida start this week and things like that. But it's going to happen. It's just going to be a few weeks away.
Matt Murschel, Orlando Sentinel. I know you're a busy man, so thanks for doing this. And by the way, my beard it's going gray like yours. It's finally happening, buddy. It's happening. Okay.
Wait till that's I'm not looking forward to the all gray or all white beard, but I mean it does show your age. So
That's right. That is exactly right. Matt Murschel, thanks for your help. Have a great day. All right, buddy.
all right, thanks a lot.